Hello, everyone. Good evening and welcome. My name is Christina Scanlon, and I'm delighted to be back as your host again tonight for our final night of Mission 2025. A reminder that if you or anyone at home has missed any of our online mission talks this week, you'll be able to watch them back on our Diocesan YouTube channel. Simply type Diocese of Kerry into YouTube and you will find us there. So once again, hello to everyone who is joining us tonight from both within and outside the diocese. As Mary Fagan always says, Céad Míle Fáilte. Before I introduce you to our guest speaker tonight, and I'm sure you're all familiar with the format now, you will be given a chance at the end to submit any questions that you might have using either the chat option or the Q&A option at the bottom of your screen. And we'll do our best to get to as many of your questions as possible. So, our particular focus and sub-theme tonight is travelling lightly. Now, not in the Ryanair context with 10 kg, but more in a spiritual, personal way. And speaking to us tonight on that theme is none other than Martina Lehane Sheehan. Martina is a well-known author and retreat facilitator with over 30 years' experience. She blends psychology and Christian contemplative spirituality to inspire mindfulness and emotional resilience. Her books delve into mental health, meditation, and spiritual awareness, which shows her dedication to fostering personal growth. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Martina now. Good evening, Martina. How are you?
Hello, Christina. Thank you. It's good to be here. The theme that I'm looking at tonight is the whole idea of traveling more lightly, traveling light. And when we think of traveling light, we think maybe of external or internal lessening our baggage. So let's unpack it a little bit. The first line I think is a line from Scripture. And early in the Gospel of Mark, we are given a picture of Jesus leaving the house early in the morning to go to a quiet place to pray. We're told early in the morning before dawn, he left the house and went to the lonely place and prayed there. And this was the busiest time of his life. He was in public ministry. He was just after healing Peter's mother-in-law. And you'd think he'd be hanging around to see what did everyone think of him, or maybe handing out evaluation forms to see how well he did. But no, he was gone off to the source of his life. He was gone to connect with his Father, with his God, to get direction, to get discernment, to get guidance, to get stillness. And the disciples followed him and said, everyone is looking for you. But he was unencumbered by that pressure, it would seem, by the drive of busyness. He was listening in and focused to see what was he to do next. And out of that place, he said to them, I must go now to the neighboring towns because that is why I came. Now, if we were able to say, that is why I came, or that's my purpose, or that's what I'm about, our lives would simplify a lot. A lot of the dross would fall away and the essential would remain. And out of that stillness, Jesus was able to say to the disciples, my food is to do the will of the Father. My food, my energy, my reason. So we might have to ask ourselves, what's feeding me? What's my food? What gives me life? And then, of course, what drains life? What depletes me? So for every yes and every commitment we make in our lives, there must also be a no. Jesus had a very clear no. He was going now to the neighboring town, not back to where he was, even though there was lots of pressure probably to go back. So what gives you life? What drains your life? And these questions, I suppose, are questions around discernment. I work in the area of spiritual direction as well as counselling, and discernment is at the centre of all of that and of anything we do in our spiritual journey, really. Discernment. We're always asking, what am I to take with me? What am I to leave behind? What's no longer essential? When Jesus visited Martha and Mary, he challenged Martha and said, Martha, Martha, you're fretting about so many things and so few are necessary. I'm sure he could say that to us as well. We're worrying and fretting about so many things, and life could be much simpler for us. And we also see that every encounter that Jesus had in the Gospels, there was a wholehearted following of his mission, but there was also a discarding. Something was thrown away. And the woman at the well left the water jar behind her. She didn't need it anymore. Bartimaeus, we're told, threw off the cloak. The fishermen left the nets behind them and followed. So for us as well, there's a simplifying needed in many stages and seasons of our lives. What do I not need to carry around anymore? What's weighing me down? What can I say no to? Because if I'm saying yes to everything, I'm doing some kind of a violence to myself. If I'm saying yes to everything and everyone and overcommitted, I'm so deluded that I'm not really able to respond to anybody in a wholehearted way. In Hebrews, in scripture, in Hebrews 12, verse 1 to 2, it says we have to throw off everything that entangles us and weighs us down so that we can run the race marked out for us. And what's marked out for us? It's often very much more simple than we realize. I think it's kind of a second half of life theme, this idea of simplifying and letting go. You know, the first half of our lives, we're very often concerned with building up our identity, accumulating our empires, so to speak. And the second half of life, we often begin the process of dismantling some of those empires, letting some of them go, simplifying. And I suppose life itself is a threshing floor. It simplifies us. Some of the experiences in our lives, if we reflect on them, we're all the time gaining wisdom and seeing, maybe I don't need to give consent and subscribe to every passing trend and every passing idea and every passing opinion. Maybe I don't have to have the disease to please everything, especially external expectations, all of the time. So our vision gets sharpened with wisdom, the wisdom of experience, really, I suppose. You know, there's a thing called keeping up with the Joneses, and it's an awful weight when we do this social comparison, when we're trying to look over our shoulders to see who's better than us or what yardstick do we need to follow. And sometimes we're holding the bar too high based on social comparison. I had a client once, many, many years ago, and she felt very enslaved to this idea of social comparison, of keeping up with the Joneses, keeping up with appearances. And she was enslaved to the best and latest fashion trend, the labels that were in fashion, the designer kitchen, and so on. And she kind of came to a crossroads and saw this wasn't giving life anymore. So she started to sift through and discern, and she was saying, you know, I don't know how I can kind of go a different road. And I was trying to help her. And I said, do you know anybody that you would admire, maybe, that lives a simpler life? And she was thinking for a while. And she said, I do. And I said, who? And she said, you, actually. And I got all inflated and delighted, and my ego went on a little trip, and I sat up straight and I said to her, and what is it about me that you'd admire? And I was looking forward to more affirmation. And of course, what goes up must come down, because soon she said, I suppose what I admire, she said, is, you know, you don't really care, she said, what people think. You don't care how you dress. You don't care, she said, about a lot of the externals. And I tried to hide the fact that I wanted the ground to swallow me up when she said, you don't really care how you dress. You don't care how you look. So I did a bit of a wardrobe clear out after that experience. But it did make me reflect a little bit on that idea of enslavement to what people think. Enslavement, codependent, I suppose, on and getting on the slippery ground of addiction, really, when we have the bar held to what everyone thinks of us. So that life gives us a threshing floor when we reflect on it. I suppose the biggest threshing floor in our lives is when everything is taken from us. And for myself, that was in the year 2022. Just over 2.5 years ago, when I lost my lovely husband, Pat. And many of you in Kerry and surrounding areas know Pat and knew him from many programs. And Pat was my soulmate, my husband, my life partner, my work colleague, the beat of my heart, and lost him after a terrible illness in 2022. And that was the worst that could happen, I think, for me on my journey, and stripped me of everything that defined me, everything that was the ground of my being. And when something like that happens, and when it happened for me, I'm a therapist, and we're supposed to know something about grief, but in truth, there's no getting over grief. But what it does do is at least what it did for me, is it punctured a lot of illusions. It stripped back a lot of the peripheries and really made me focus on what are the essentials. What is the horizon of hope when life empties you out? And, as I said, we don't really get over something like that. We carry the ache. But the ache, if we visit it, has medicine in it. It has a medicine for life. It has wisdom for life in it. And one of the things that came sharper into view since Pat's passing for me was the shortness of life, the transience of many, many things, the impermanence of many, many things. And far from this being morbid, it actually is liberating. It actually sets our compass and recalibrates us and resets us to what's really important. And Teresa of Avila has a lovely couple of lines. She says, let nothing disturb you. I'm just calling them out here. Let nothing frighten you. All things pass away. God never changes. Patience obtains all things. Whoever has God lacks nothing. God alone suffices. And when we look at things like impermanence and transience in the face, we really see that wisdom. That no matter, and if you're going through a really difficult storm at the moment, it's helpful to know that all things pass. This isn't permanent. And then to discern, what is it that lasts? What is it that endures when life strips things away? So a lot of the baggage gets dismantled. Things like, our need to be right, our need for our opinion to be heard, they become less important. The need for everyone to like us, it takes a backseat. And we start living on purpose, saying, what really brings life? Because the real baggage that most of us carry is internal baggage. Internal, the external is easy enough sometimes. We can downsize and things like that. But the internal baggage is the real stuff we need to start to release. And the internal baggage is that, there are three main ones actually. They've got to do with living in the past, living in the future. So when we live in the past, we live in a thing called ruminative anxiety, ruminating. Oh my God, why didn't I do that? If only I'd do that different. Oh, I wish I hadn't said that. Are you familiar with that? That's ruminative anxiety. Anticipatory anxiety is when the mind is gone ahead into the future. What if, what if, what if? How am I going to manage that? What if people don't like me? What if I can't afford it? And so on. And when we're there, we're in the future. So the past and the future are very heavy luggage. But when we're fully in the present moment, we're traveling light. When we release ourselves of the past. One day I was working on the computer and I couldn't get into some file or something. It was a good few years ago. And I was in this room here and I called Pat and I said, Pat, can you help me here with my computer? And he looked at the screen and he said, look, Martina, there's a notice there at the end. And it said, old programs still running. And he smiled. And I smiled. And I recognized it wasn't just on my program, on my computer, that old programs were still running. But in the internal software, very often there are old programs still running. Old programs that maybe we picked up in our growing up, unconscious vows that said, I must always be strong, I must always be capable, I must always be in control. Maybe we can release those old programs. They don't serve us. They put burdens on us. But the good news is, especially in recent years, we're learning a lot from neuroscience. When I was studying psychology and psychotherapy, we were learning about what makes us unwell. There's new streams in psychology now, particularly in neuroscience, and we're learning what makes us balanced and well and joyful. And we've learned that in a thing called neuroplasticity, a big word, that the brain can change itself with repeated habits. There are things called neural pathways in your brain, in my brain, and they're created through habit. So if every day I'm telling myself, oh, I'm no good, I can't cope, why can't I be like others, why didn't I do that differently, oh, I won't cope with this, and so on, I'm setting up neural pathways through habits. And the more I repeat those narratives and stories to myself, the more embedded they'll become. The more they'll become my normal, and I'll believe them. But if I'm introducing new programs, like I can cope with this, one that I use every day is I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. It's a real empowering belief system. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I can face today through Christ who strengthens me. That's a new program I've put in. So if we're cultivating gratitude, if we're cultivating living in the present moment, if we're cultivating empowering beliefs, our lives simplify because we're not carrying the luggage of the old programs. So simplifying our lives means also simplifying and lessening the time we spend on screens. A digital detox would be a great thing to do because it increases anxiety. We get into that social comparison thing. We have a thing called OCD, obsessive checking disorder. So when we're overly checking everything, we build up a thing called allostatic load, which is like brain burnout. So a bit of a digital detox can help in our traveling light. Looking at what we give our time to. Even doing some physical decluttering helps us to start to declutter the inside because they kind of go in tandem with each other. I'm doing them these few days and it does lighten the load a little bit. We have a wonderful thing in our disposal in our Christian contemplative tradition, Christian mindfulness. People think you have to turn to all sorts of Eastern philosophies to practice mindfulness. It's all in our monastic tradition. And in our monastic tradition, in our contemplative tradition, there's a rhythm that's encouraged to live with a statio, S-T-A-T-I-O, a statio moment in between the things we do. Take a pause, take a breath. Because a lot of what drives us is the fear that we don't have enough, and even worse, that we are not enough. And you know, the truth is, if you and I knew who we are and whose we are, we'd travel much more lightly. If we knew we were the beloved the beloved daughter, the beloved son of God. I'm going to share a little video poem. One thing that I wrote myself, one thing that often happens for me if I'm reading a piece of scripture is that scripture is alive. I run a lot of Lectio Divina programs online and so on, and scripture comes alive and turns into often a poem or something. And this one is about our inner gold. If you and I knew we were cherished and beloved, we wouldn't be giving consent to what everyone thinks of us and to every passing opinion. The poem says, do not yield your golden glory to another, for you are daughter, son of royal blood. And it says, don't let others trample on your soul, and don't worship at the altar of success. So let's listen and look at the poem and see if a line resonates with you about being the beloved.
Do not yield your glory to another, for you are daughter, son of royal blood, running through your veins, dancing in your golden toes. So wrap yourself in cloaks of purple, red and gold. Call yourself beloved, lovely one. No, do not yield your golden glory to another, or beg for crumbs from tables not your own. Clothe yourself in heaven's garments, woven from the very best of thread. Call yourself integrity, wear it like a crown upon your head, so others know they cannot ever, ever trample on your soul. Let them see you walk upon this earth as one who is beloved. So do not settle, do not sell, nor worship at the altar of success defined by any artificial goal. Turn your face from mire to golden sun. Let heaven's gaze remind you that you are made for flight. So lift your face, dear one, and see your soul is bright. It's very, very bright.
So maybe just for a half a second or two, just place your hand on your heart and take a breath. Let your eyes close softly for a minute. And placing your hand on your heart, say to yourself, I am the beloved. I am the beloved of the one who gazes on me with love. And let your shoulders drop. And picture some of the luggage, the programs you carry, the burdens you carry, rolling off your shoulders as you repeat, I am the beloved, the lovely one, the one in whom God's love rests. I am beloved. I can travel light.
So now I'm going to introduce my colleague, Bernie McCaffrey, who will present your questions to Martina. Hello, Bernie.
Martina, that was just wonderful. I was really touched by your poem.
Thanks.
And I think, maybe we don't hear that often enough, that we're the beloved. Yeah, so that was wonderful. Yeah, and a lot of people into the comments have put in thanks and appreciate what you've said around that. Yeah, so I hope they find that gold in themselves as well.
Exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, just a question for you, and I kind of put some of them together. Martina, is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible to travel lightly with all the uncertainty in the world today?
Very good question. And just before I came on, my God, the news, we're so divided and there's so much conflict and crisis in our world. And is it possible to travel lightly? I think it's all the more reason we need practices of traveling lightly. It's all the more reason that we need to do what Jesus did in the gospel, which is to go back to the source every single day. And traveling lightly is a recognition, that we can't get tomorrow's bread today. We can only get today's bread today. So if we can rely on our source, which is God, just for today, there's a lot of things we can't control. The serenity prayer is a great prayer. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. I was watching the news there before we came on tonight, and I was getting a bit overwhelmed. And then I said, okay, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, but courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So every one of us here in this world of turbulence and change, we all have a ripple effect. No matter how small it is, every one of us has a ripple effect. And we also live within limitations, and there are things we can't change.
That was another question, Martina, like sort of what practice helps to move into that space of being able to travel lightly?
Yeah, I think we absolutely have to have practices. For me, the morning is essential. Now everyone is different, but I have to do some. I pray with scripture in the morning. That's my time for meditation, for reflection. I have to make time for that. Otherwise, I'm going to be all over the place, and every little worry will hold me captive, and every concern will consume me. So if I get my compass in the morning, and what I've had to do as well, Bernie, is not to listen to the news first thing in the morning. Yes, we must listen to the news, but not first thing in the morning. So the first thing in the morning for me is to get back in contact, to align myself with God, with the essential questions, and to get a little bit of a focus for the day. Otherwise, I think it's like going out on a motorbike without a helmet, because there's so much turbulence and so much atmospheric stuff even around us, that we do have to have a practice.
Yeah. How can I help those around me to travel lightly?
Okay. How can I help those around me to travel lightly? Yeah, that's an interesting question. So, I suppose we can be first of all, it's very easy to get subscribed to a culture of consumerism, competition, control, bigger, better, faster. And the first thing is to help people to become aware that we are maybe subscribed to a culture of excess and a culture of control and competition, that maybe is not of our choosing. So the first thing is to withdraw and to look at, does this match my values? So to look at awareness, I suppose, is key, and to help people to become aware that they're the beloved, that they don't need to compensate all the time by trying to be someone that they're not. So encouraging each other in our true self, building each other up to know you are enough.
Yeah. And another question tying on to that, it's that your input was beautiful, and I always like the idea of saying no, but this can be so much harder with close relatives.
Yeah. And I suppose it's like, absolutely. And I suppose we have to look at the motive of our no, because sometimes we just have an unconscious disease to please, which is based on our feeling we're not enough unless we're helping people all the time, feeling we're not, and we do have to help people, but it's like that needs to come from service rather than a compulsion. Yeah. Because sometimes we get very codependent, and we, I can be like that. Oh, I want everyone to like me. I want everyone to like me. I don't want anyone to not like me. So I'm going to say yes to you and you and you and you. And then I'm saying no to myself, and I'm burnt out and resentful. And there's actually something I heard once is a definition of a martyr is somebody who'll do anything for you, and later they'll send you the bill. And you know what the bill is, Bernie? Resentment.
Yeah.
So we have to be discerning around, am I doing this out of the need to be liked, and will I end up being resentful, or is it true service? Because yes, we're created for service, we're interconnected, we're made to help each other out. But if we're doing it out of a compulsion and out of a habit, and out of fear, we end up very resentful.
Are there any books you'd recommend on living a simple life?
I'm going to recommend one of my own. And a lot of people are like, I have written 7 books, and they're all on that theme, really. But Trellis for the Soul is one, I think, where a lot of people are familiar with already and I run courses on it as well. But Trellis for the Soul is excavating some Christian contemplative monastic tradition and bringing it into contemporary living, so that we can live monastic life in ordinary life. And that's about slowing down, pacing ourselves, pausing, being mindful, but mindful in a God sense, So Trellis for the Soul, I think, would help.
And someone else had asked, they loved your poem, and could they get a link to it?
Okay, so good question. Lucinda, my colleague, I think you might know her, Bernie, you do a lot of the online programs. So in fact, just today, yesterday, and these days, the website is being updated, and there's loads of resources on it. And there's a talk on compassion on it, or a reflection on compassion. There's one on Christian mindfulness. There's one on all sorts of things. And there's loads of the videos as well of those kind of poems. And it's ruarest.com. There's loads of free resources on it. Rua, RUAHREST.com. ruarest.com. And it's packed full with resources, and especially over the next few days, Lucinda's putting up more and more stuff. So there's poems on it, there's reflections on it, there's videos on it, and it's all free under the resources section. And over the next few days, there'll be more and more going up. So yeah, ruarest.com.
So thanks for that generosity, Martina, of that sharing that you do with your site, and I'm availed of it, so I know the value of it. As a parent, I totally agree with living a more simple life, but my children find the concept difficult. They want to be just like their friends. So what can I do?
Yeah. And I think compassion for that, because remember when I said earlier about, it can be more a second half of life theme. I didn't want simplicity when I was a teenager. So it's to be gentle and compassionate we go through seasons of life, and they will be led by your example. Become the role model of somebody who lives simply, who lives a different rhythm, and it's infectious. But there are seasons in our lives, of course. So yeah.
And someone else had written in a comment, thank you for the beautiful prayer that you used. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Mm-hmm. So a lot of comments thanking you, and people that are getting a lot out of the programme. And while we could stay talking all night, Martina, we're on strict time frames here.
Of course.
So would you like to bring that to a close? So just thank you so much for all of that. Yeah.
Pleasure. Thanks, Bernie. It's been a pleasure to be on. And I think, the big number showing up as well is all saying that there's a collective cry in consciousness for a different way of life, and for a spiritual way of life, and a soul-led way of life. And that's so encouraging to see. So it's been a pleasure.
That's great. Thank you very much, Bernie. Martina, do you have any final comment that you'd like to make?
I think maybe it's really to go back to that serenity prayer for all of us. God grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, courage to change the things we can each day, and the wisdom to know the difference. And we only do it day by day, moment by moment, and with each other. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Martina. Now, before we finish up, I would now like to welcome Bishop Ray Brown, who will close our mission with a little blessing, and I'll be back to say goodnight after that. Hello, Bishop Ray, how are you?
Good evening,
You're
all.
very welcome.
Good evening. Wonderful to think of all gathered from all the parishes, all the corners, all the pastoral areas of the diocese and all the County Kerry and our precious pieces of County Cork. Sincere thanks to Martina. Just a few words as we quieten down. It was a wonderful presentation. I put on the booklet that's words from Psalm 32. May your love be upon us, O Lord, as we place all our hope in you. So first, well done, and a sincere thank you to all involved in the online mission, the pastoral centre team, speakers, so many others. So sincere thanks. And just a simple thought or two that, I think in recent years there's been less talk of New Year's resolutions, but maybe a better way to frame the question of the new year is, what helps you look forward to the new year? Look forward to the year ahead. What helps you feel good about the year ahead? Has the Christmas reminded us of God walking among us? As God and Jesus truly being part of our families and our communities? Has Christmas helped us lift our spirits for the year ahead? Similarly, the online mission, the evening talks, maybe for many people sitting quietly each day with the booklet, as say Martina's theme tonight, travelling lightly, travelling well. Just recalling the 4 talks, Brother Richard spoke of hope in God, hope in Jesus Christ, hope in God being an anchor in our lives. There's a storm coming. If the boats are well anchored, they'll handle it. Is hope in God our anchor? Cuiva from Trocra reminded us that we cannot not do something about world poverty. And in particular, she spoke of where those who least damage the earth suffer most as a result of disastrous weather events. Think of the disastrous weather events. Think of how much people have suffered. David last night spoke of the joy that comes from knowing God, knowing that God is ever there for us. He reminds us of that phrase in Pope Francis' first encyclical, sourpusses. Christians cannot be sourpusses. Deep down, our faith in God has implanted joy deep within us that we have to let it come to the surface. And then tonight, what can summarise Martina? But she did focus on what matters, what really matters in the lives of us human beings. What really matters. How we get all sorts of baggage that weighs us down that doesn't really matter. What matters is relationships. What matters is appreciating ourselves, appreciating one another, seeing the good in everyone. So just those few thoughts, remembering this is the final night. At the final night, we close. So let's thank God for all that's happened over the last 4 days, online, through the website, in the booklet. May it have helped us all to be in a good place as we face and live through every day of 2025. Whatever befalls ourselves, our homes, our communities, may our hope be in God. May our hope in God be a strength and a true blessing. Back to where I started. That prayer, let it be our prayer. May your love be upon us, O Lord, as we place all our hope in you. Every blessing on all who are gathered online. Every blessing on all parish communities throughout the diocese. It's lovely to be united. every blessing, especially on those burdened, on those for whom life is dark at the moment. Every blessing. Manjil Huktik Shiv, Ahar, Mach, Oxen Spirit Neve, Arash Hugot, Christina.
Garav Mila Magat, Bishop Ray, Vishishin Gahalan. So thank you for that. That's great. So that brings our mission 2025 to a close. I hope you all have enjoyed the week, and I hope that you found it both hopeful and helpful. So here's to our journey now through this Jubilee year of 2025 as Pilgrims of Hope. And to sing us out tonight, we're going to listen to a lovely choir from Mill Street in County Cork. They are singing our mission hymn, Sail the Soul by Liam Lawton. So I hope you enjoy it. Thanks so much for joining online. Take care, good night, God bless everyone, and best wishes for the year ahead.